Okay, so I played in Cherry Blossom Classic over the weekend, long weekend, and I'm going to kind of talk about my game as an experience of how you shouldn't be playing chess. So, well, I was kind of joking and kind of not joking about it because I played actually a really bad game, and that's the game I'm actually going to talk about today. It's not that how the mistakes happened, and I'm actually going to go in depth about what exactly was I calculating during the game, what kind of thinking led to that mistakes, and basically that's the theme of today's lesson. Okay, we are going to calculate some of it together. Particularly, I thought this is an interesting lesson because if I remember right, the last session I had with you guys, I was talking about the thinking process with some, how to problem solve. So I kind of did some things that I was not supposed to do. So I think this would be really nice to talk about this. Again, I like this because I just played this tournament. The thoughts are very, very clear in my head. So I can tell you exactly what I was thinking, why I made these decisions, which I won't be able to do, of course, in a month or two. So that's the reason I think this would be good. Which board was this? Max, this was board one, actually, when I played this against Ilya Nizhnik. So he won the tournament. He tied for first. He played beautifully. So this is the game I do want to show all of you, okay? And of course, we'll calculate some things together. I don't think, the game didn't last much long, but I think within the critical moments of the game, we will have some interesting decisions to make and interesting things to discuss. So I think that's what we'll go over. I think Max says he played in the tournament. Okay. I didn't see you, but let's see. Anyone else who played in Cherry Blossom? Brian, you played in Cherry Blossom. Okay, nice. How did you do? Oh, but right, you said you played in Chicago. Okay, nice. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started without any further delays. Okay, so I was playing black. Just to give you a little bit of a heads up about what was the background of the tournament is, of course, this is the first kind of tournament I'm playing after a year, which is probably the case for most players. Arnav says he got 4 out of 7 under 2,300 and went from 2012 to 2039. Good, Arnav. That's nice. So yeah, most players I think have not been playing over the board, and this is probably like a nice, refreshing thing we did. And I know in coming months, we're probably going to have some big ones. So we have the National Open, we have World Open. So I'm kind of looking forward to my students playing in person as well. I'm sure all of you are, right? So this was the fourth game. I had 2.5 points. I made a draw in my very first game. Havish is saying, this is my first class with you. Oh, you're a student of Grandmaster Arun Prasad. Good, excellent. We are great friends. And so welcome to the class, Havish. So the going into the game, I probably had about an hour and a half to prepare. It's like not much. And if you know my playing style, I'm not really an opening expert. So when I go into a tournament, I try to refresh my openings as much as possible. Otherwise, I'm usually in trouble, particularly from black. So let's go over the game. So e4, e5, bishop c4. So, okay, so he's basically playing the Vienna. And the only tricky part about this opening is, I guess, f4 at some point can be dangerous. So black's move order is usually this knight a5. If I don't play this knight a5, I think at some point f4 and white gets quite an aggressive position. So let's stick to the game now, guys. I know the chat is fun, but we'll come back to everyone chat and about other things after that. But let's get back to the game. So you played bishop d5 here. Actually, already I have to say I'm a little lost. I had seen some bishop b3 ideas. I'd seen where they give up the bishop on c4 itself, but did not see this bishop d5. And I checked after that too. It doesn't look like it's something that's popular. So I don't know exactly what the deal is. We'll go into it and of course look at it at some point. So c6 bishop b3. bishop e7, and then knight f3 castle. So I mean, all of this is pretty normal. Okay, sorry, d6 first, of course, castle, castle. Yeah. So at this point, of course, I'm always thinking at any point I can take on b3. Yeah. So I could take on b3. I could just kind of wait. At this point, bishop a4 is not that big a deal because b5 is really nice for me, right? Havish, it's correct. Yeah, actually, I think c6 was something I was looking forward to. So in the game, actually, I was kind of curious why he let me play c6 as a free move, because I take on b3. At some point, d5 seems to be a very logical idea for black. So c6 seems to be an extra move. Yeah. So he played h3, and I played rook d8. Again, I wanted to simply go bishop f8 and d5 as my main idea. I was not sure if I need to play h6. If I needed to, at some point, I'll play it. But otherwise, mainly, I'm just going to go bishop f8 and d5. And again, there is some knight g5 threats, but I can always take. Nothing special, yeah? So knight e2 was played. Bishop f8. We played knight g3. Here again, probably d5 is quite interesting. I played h6. So let's start from here. Use the chat. Tell me, what do you think white should do here? Well, Ryo, I think you should. I want to show this game from black's perspective because I'm going to take you through this journey like it's my game, like you're doing that. But I still want you to think about white's best move. There's nothing wrong, yeah? So what would you play as white here? And use the private chat for this, please. So it doesn't have to be too much. I would just give you a couple of minutes. So let's just... Let me take a timer and yeah. Okay, I got something. Santosh has given me something. Aradhya. Evan has given me something. Wait, Evan is asking if it's chess base 16. Yes, it is chess base 16, yes. Angela, you have to play for white. It's white's turn to play. I see Ryan. Did I show you this game? I didn't, right? Just want to make sure that Ryan drew. Merrick has given me a move. Good to see you, Merrick. Andy. Ryan's saying, no, I didn't. Okay, good. Havish, I think you're also giving me something for black, yeah? I want something for white. Okay. So we're almost done with the time. The good thing is I see a lot of moves from a lot of you, which is good. Now, again, if you've been to one of my classes before, I would love to get more and more feedback. Remember this, I thrive on that. I can help. We can talk about a lot of things based on what you give me as a feedback. So keep answering questions as much as possible. Ryo forgot to exclaim. All right, guys, time is up. So the good news is I think I can take you through with my journey because most of you are thinking about the kind of things that I was thinking about in the game. And the only thing I want to point out is I think knight h4 is quite dangerous though. Everything else I think is okay. Knight h4, I don't know if you can really deal with knight takes e4. Of course, I'll take knight takes b3 first, and then I'll think knight takes e4 is going to win a pawn. Knight h2 is very normal, c3, all these things were all normal, right? My opponent played bishop takes f7. So first point is I just looked at it, it's like, what did I miss? Okay, kind of obvious to see now, right? And also I was kind of laughing within because all along I was wondering why he played bishop d5 and gave me a free move on c6. It should not have mattered at all if I had taken the bishop early on, but clearly I kind of gave him a meaning to his move, which kind of made me smile a little bit. So, okay, so bishop takes f7. First thing is it's like kind of in your face. I'm like, I had no idea what's going on. But luckily, this is not a losing type of tactic, yeah? So it's not like I'm lost. It seems to be a simple trade. So, yeah, I was a little positive about this. Okay, so I take on f7, he plays b4, and he wins the knight, yeah? So what do you guys think about the trade? What do you think? I mean, like, this is, like I said, it's a tactical shot, but it's not necessarily winning any material. What are the pros and cons? Can we talk about the position to say the good and bad things that are happening with this? If you want to speak, of course. Okay, let's go to Ryo wants to say something. All right, Ryo, let's go.
Yeah, so after the trade, like we want him to take on a5, and then we're probably going to take back at some point. And now what we've got is like the a2 pawn is kind of weak, and what he's got is now he has more pawns on the king side, which means he can just break through with f4 and then once we trade it off, most likely or f5 comes or takes even, and after I retrade, then I have a better center, and also like your bishop pair isn't doing much really.
Okay, so would you say overall that you like white with this trade-off?
I think white's a bit better, at least.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone else to maybe add something or to counter that? Evan says no more f7 pawn. That's great. Pro bishop on b3 isn't that good? So bishop pair, yeah. But a future f4 is a massive problem. William, that's correct. f4 is a big plan, right? So what I was calculating here was that, okay, I saw that the bishop pair is probably my consolation, yeah? So I don't see anything immediate, particularly with this bishop sitting here. I don't seem to really have any great prospects yet. But the good news is with the bishop pair, as always, right, it just gives you more options, right? Brian, it's not a piece up. I'm just taking the bishop, and after b4, white wins it back, yeah? So the point was that you get more options because if you open up the position more, you have more options to open up the position if you have a bishop pair, right? In terms of pawn structure, I think we can say it's not a big deal. This pawn, like some of you pointed out, is a weak pawn, but okay, it's not a big deal at all because I don't have easy ways to attack it. And white does have a very solid center and a very solid plan to play f4 on the king side. And also, I see kind of he waited for me to play h6, so I have some light square weaknesses too on the king side. But I was not too worried about the light square weakness because of the bishop on c8, and he doesn't have a light square bishop either, right? So the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to give you the time that I spent in this position, and I'm going to talk about some of the variations that I calculated and some of the mistakes that I made in these calculations, which is very common, and hopefully we can kind of relate to it in some sense. And then you can also point out what kind of mistakes that I'm making, right? So I'll tell you the first thought process that goes into my mind. So I played this move instantly because what is the point? Yeah, this is a very practical move. But after b4, I would say I spent about 20 minutes. Between 18 to 20 minutes, I started thinking quite a bit because it's a G120, yeah? So we had 2 hours, and I felt this is probably a critical point for me to make some decisions. So I spent about 20 minutes. Now, my simple first idea is, okay, king g8. I'm going to just tell you the variation. I'm not going to play it, obviously, because I want you to go through the journey like me in the game. So king g8, b takes a5, queen takes a5, and I felt the most critical idea for white has to be some idea to play f4. So knight h4. So now I was trying to figure out what can I do. So maybe queen c7, maybe queen d8, maybe king h7. I was looking at some options. Eventually, I felt queen d8 is a little bit more comfortable for me. And after queen d8, now I'm threatening some discovered attacks on the knight. So knight can either jump to f5 or g6. And I was not worried about knight g6. Simply, I play king h7. And if he plays knight takes f8, I play rook takes f8. So overall, it seemed to me that this is okay, right? And if the knight did go to f5 from h4, I felt I should be able to play king h7 and eventually play g6, if not right away. And again, I didn't feel too worried about it, right? So I was kind of working around these variations, trying to see where else can white do something, maybe d4, maybe f4. What else can white do here? So I would say I spent between 5 to 7 minutes in this set of variations, and it's a total waste of time. Who can tell me what did I miss? What's wrong with this calculation? Troy, thank you. Andy, thank you. I'm going to give a few more seconds to see if someone else can also, if others can also join in and figure out what you're talking about. So, Raya, I don't want it to be more general, right? I want you to be very specific about what I just calculated right now. I think I need to think about these kind of moves. It's not complicated, but at least thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead seems to be fair. So Evan is asking, what is my calculation? Okay, so king g8 pawn takes, queen takes, knight h4, queen coming back to d8, and then this is kind of the position I was really trying to evaluate, right? And spending time trying to figure out, or if there is any other move other than knight h4, at some point trying to figure out f4 and d4. So this is the kind of place I was spending time between 5 to 7 minutes, and it turned out to be a waste. A lesson on how not to calculate. The last time we did a lesson on how to calculate. Correct thinking process. Okay, correct. So Havish and William have also joined it. Okay, good enough. So now I'm going to talk about it. Yes, white just doesn't have to take the knight on a5. This is not a force move at all. Yeah? I was totally wasting my time with king g8 because after king g8, I just realized that white, at some point, I don't know how it came to me, I was just calculating a bunch of variations, looking for some options, and suddenly hit me, wait, he doesn't even take it. He plays bishop d2 or he plays queen e1 or mostly bishop d2, I guess, yeah? And I'm thinking now this just looks terrible for me. I lose the knight and I don't win the pawn back, and that's just bad. Even though it's a double set of pawns, I don't want to be down a pawn. And if I do win the pawn back like this is just a terrible pawn structure, right? So I don't know how many of you attended the class on how to calculate when we did that based on the studies to problem solve and everything. One of the key things that I talked about is that if you spend a lot of time in positions that do not matter, right, then you're kind of giving away all of your chances to solve the problems in front of you. And this is, I think, a very common problem for most players, which we don't sometimes realize. So that's the reason I really wanted to show this game and discuss it with all of you, is that if you end up spending in 20 minutes, I told you I spent 20 minutes. That's actually not a bad thing, because I think this is kind of critical for me to think and make a decision. But I think most of my time went on wrong variations. Now I'll tell you the next variation that I calculated, which is even more ridiculous. But we'll come to this, yeah? So, okay, king g8, bishop d2, then I realized this is just bad, right? But before that, I'd also considered moves like d5 or some other things instead of king g8. I also stopped to think I don't have to go right away, right? So I was kind of aware of this f4 idea, but I was thinking I don't need to go king g8 right away, right? But the minute I spotted bishop d2, my main kind of ideas started going to, I need to make a move that forces white to take the knight. So what are the candidate moves? Okay, I'm seeing c5, b5, correct? Very good. These two moves immediately popped up, right? And also d5. I don't know, bishop d6. Bishop e6, I think, Andy, you're trying to play knight to c4, yeah? Okay, that's actually quite interesting. I didn't even consider bishop e6, but I think fair enough. That seems to be a reasonable thing. The only problem is I think I'm too worried about f4. When f4 happens, I'm just scared. I think the king and bishop here might not be the best combination. But anyway, so I was mainly working on d5, c5, and b5. So my next blatant mistake, let's see who can point this out. My next variation at some point that I calculated is d5, bishop d2. Now I spotted a move like bishop takes b4, thinking, you know what, I could actually give up this bishop instead of giving up the knight. Why? Because after bishop takes b4, pawn takes c4, pawn takes e4, I play queen takes d1, rook takes d1, and my knight actually gets to c4. So this was one of the variations I calculated. I didn't waste too much time, probably a couple of minutes. I'm showing this for a precise reason. I'll tell you why. But what's wrong with this variation? Aradhya is saying, oops. I hope you can tell me why. So actually, so if they play bishop takes a5, I play queen takes a5. That is also okay, Ryan. I don't think that's not that big a deal. Oh, I thought you figured it out. Okay, I'm going to tell you this variation, guys. I think this is a much easier variation to spot the problem with. Like I said, I didn't spend too much time on this. I just want to know what's wrong with this variation. d5, bishop d2, bishop takes b4, bishop takes b4, d takes e4, d takes e4, queen takes d1, rook f takes d1, knight to c4, and I evaluated that position to be about equal with my knight sitting on c4. I don't think bishop e6 is bad, Ashish. Sir Wagner, knight e4 is not that big a deal. Knight takes e4, knight takes e4 is a knight trade, that's all. Bishop takes a5 was also being given. So after bishop takes b4, bishop takes b4. When I play d takes e4, if you play bishop takes a5, I play queen takes a5. That is, okay, still about equal, I would say. My queen is guarding the e5 pawn. I'll go bishop e6, king g8, rook d8. Seems about equal, guys. The reason I'm, again, saying this is my opponent probably didn't even spend 1 minute thinking about this. The 2 minutes that I thought about it turned out to be a waste. No? No one? To be more precise, I think black is completely winning in that variation, if I play correctly. White, I played a very bad move for white in that variation. Let me put it that way. Kevin, that's possible, Kevin, but I'm threatening after d5, bishop takes b4, yeah? b4 is hanging. But remember, you're down a piece, Kevin. So if you don't take on a5, you're not going to get the piece back, right? You can win the pawn back, but not. Okay, Fryo has given me an answer. After d5, bishop d2 is just a blunder. William, I'm going to come to that in just a second, yeah? Yep, Andy, now you're telling me the correct move, of course. So this is just ridiculous move because I simply take on e4, yeah? If I take on e4, my knight is escaping to c4. Or, of course, white will have to give up multiple pawns. I don't even know if that's possible. It's unnecessary to calculate that. Simply, pawn takes e4 is just losing. So I'm going to, again, the reason I show you this is like, I'll tell you what happened in the game, right? So I'm thinking a lot about all these variations and I play this, right? After d5, my main variation that I'm expecting from my opponent is actually at this point to capture. Because remember, I rejected bishop d2 for bishop b4, not for d takes e4. Eventually, I thought I'm okay with bishop takes b4. I mean, if I had played it, maybe I would have figured it out. But I'm expecting this move mainly. Okay, my opponent, he plays queen e1. Which is what I think William is asking me. Yeah, that's right. Now, the thing is, in whole of my variations, so the two variations that didn't really matter, one of them, I was really interested in playing knight h4 and bringing the queen to f3 mostly. In the other one, I was really interested in playing bishop d2 to win that knight and keep that pawn. So to me, the queen belonged to d1. So at some point, f4 and queen f3 seemed more reasonable. So I had really not considered queen e1 when I'm trying to attack the knight. There was only one real chance in my mind, that was bishop d2. I had really not considered queen e1. So he played queen e1. So I want everyone to take some time. Let's say we'll do 2-3 minutes, and then let's see what is the best move for white. Sorry, for black now. Let's do 3 minutes. Use the chat. What should black do? So, Ashish, it's possible, but take your time a little bit. Think about it. Because again, I want you to think about what are the options here and what would be the best result. I mean, best possible continuation for black. Again, I made terrible choice in this game. Move after move, I had to make bad decisions, and I did. Okay, so Raya is giving me something, and Andy, I see your variation, quite interesting. Okay, so Brian, I think you're just sacrifice the pawn and play. I think that's possible too. By the way, Andy, I think in your variation, e5 might be hanging, yeah? So you have to be careful. Right now, with queen e1, I'm not only attacking the knight, I'm also attacking e5. All right, everyone, give me some options. So we have about 1 more minute left. Okay, Santosh has given me his final version, I think. So Ryan, can you continue your variation? You've given me one move. What will happen after that variation? So Ryo, yeah, that's very much possible. I'm going to discuss that because there is another part of the game which will get to a similar structure. So I will address it. So we'll get there. Okay. Actually, I see William. I see a variation. I think you should get some compensation there, but we'll discuss that. Yeah. All right, guys. So time is up. So I think most of so knight c4 was really considered. I think knight c4 is a very reasonable move. I think, but pawn takes, and queen c3 looks kind of interesting. But I didn't analyze the position in depth with the computer, but if I remember right, I think knight c4 is probably the best attempt for black. I don't think white, white is obviously better here. The minute white played bishop takes f7, it's better for white. But knight c4 probably is the best attempt here. But I'm going to go more into depth of what are the options and what can be done. So some of you took on e4. I would say that's probably not a great decision. So if you take on e4 with the knight or with the pawn, actually I would simply take it back with this, yeah? I don't have to do anything else. And then I pick up your knight, and I think your position is much, much worse. So the problem is, I think when you took with the knight, you assumed that I will take this knight. I don't need to, yeah? The whole idea of queen e1 is to make sure the d3 pawn stays if you take on e4. So whether you take pawn takes e4 or knight takes e4, I will take back with my knight, and I don't think that's going to work very well, yeah? Now, b5 was considered, I think, Sarvagna, and I also think Andy gave this idea. But the problem is, I think you have some real serious issues with the e5 pawn. So actually, maybe not take first, yeah? Maybe bishop b2, I don't know. Or do I have simply a3 here? Yeah, maybe even a3 is... a3 of queen takes a5, bishop d2. Yeah, even that works, yeah? Because if you play queen takes a5... Oh, chess base is ridiculous. When I make a new variation, it'll hide this box somewhere in the end of the world where I cannot find it. Okay, here it is. Okay, so if queen takes a5, bishop d2. And I still think danger. Or maybe bishop a6 and some interesting give the pawn back and then keep playing. This is not the end of the world. It's possible. I think b5, b4 is interesting. So I spent about 2.5 minutes here. And I made my move. And I think it's because I was kind of exhausted. I mean, I wouldn't say completely exhausted. I didn't want to spend another 5 or 10 minutes trying to figure out what is the best move here, because my first 20 minutes was obviously a waste of my time, right? So typically, if you spend 20 minutes and you make a decision and you go in the path, you want to kind of follow through, right? You don't want to spend another time again. Because I had missed queen e1 as in any of my real calculation in this position. So d5 queen e1 was really not, queen e1 was not part of my whole calculation. I just didn't have any clue about this position, but guess what? I played bishop takes b4. I wanted to go with the previous variation that I had seen before, right? I saw, okay, you can take on a5, but I can just play bishop takes b4. My calculation was very quick. Bishop takes b4, queen takes b4, and I play b6. So the idea is I'm going to play c5 and I'm going to play knight c6. So all my pawns are going to be in dark squares. My knight will come to c6 and then try to go to d4. And that's my big compensation for having an isolated pawn on e5. And if he can usually never play c3, this pawn will become too weak. I also have a light squared bishop, right? So conceptually, this is the plan. And I think conceptually, again, this is not bad. But this is, if after the game, I kind of looked at it and I said, okay, this is the kind of decision you would never make, right? I mean, like if you go back, you can lose the knight or you can lose the bishop. Which one would you give up, right? So the previous variation that I'd seen, bishop takes b4, the only reason I liked it is because my knight was actually going to c4. In that variation where the queen was getting traded on d1 and my knight was going to c4. In this variation, there's nothing close to that. I literally saw b6 probably 1 minute right before I played the game. Played the move. And I played bishop takes b4, queen takes b4, b6, thinking, oh, this should be okay because I'll play c5, knight c6. The knight will come back into the game and it's okay. So so one of the things I'm trying to teach or explain with all of you today is that it's not good enough to say I blundered or I made a mistake, right? Today, I really want to help all of you understand when you make a mistake, there are so many things that's going on inside, and this is only going to be available to your own head. Nobody else can do this. Your coach cannot do this. Your parents cannot do this, right? This is you being able to recollect what exactly you were thinking during the game, why you made these decisions, right? If it turns out to be a ridiculous blunder, if it turns out to be a bad positional move, whatever that is, there is no one else who can tell you this, right? And it's extremely invaluable because this is going to tell you how you can improve, right? I did make some corrections in this tournament and it worked to some extent. I'll tell you what I did, right? And I'll tell you what worked. We'll get to that part after we figure out what the problems are. So, okay, so I played b6 here, and I kind of got up and started walking around. It's like I had the position completely under control. Also, mainly because I wanted to take a break. I didn't want to keep on thinking. So he spent some time, not much, I would say less than 5 minutes, and he found, in my opinion, the best move. I didn't analyze the whole game with the computer, by the way, just disclosure. He played queen b2, and this is very nice. Basically, my whole idea revolves around d4 and c5. So Raya, this is what I wanted to talk about. At some point, I wanted to play c5, knight c6, right? But if he plays, so for example, if he plays bishop b2, I was going to play c5, and I play knight c6, and I won't play d4 because my knight wants to go to d4. And let's say he plays queen c3. At this point, I was going to play this, and wherever his queen moves, I don't know, probably back this side because this side might not help so much, and then I go c5. And when the knight goes out, I play king here. So this structure was a little scary for me because this is very dangerous. And my king side is super dangerous, yeah, because all these light squares are extremely weak. But I felt I can manage. I go knight c6, I go knight e5. And again, a playable position, I thought. Maybe slightly worse, but I should be able to deal with it. And if I can contain the king side, then I can definitely play on the queen side. But okay, by playing queen b2, he's really killing everything. I don't get d4 with the tempo. So then he simply goes knight h4, f4, or actually around knight h4, maybe knight h2, or knight h4, I don't know. Maybe knight h4 is actually possible. So I really didn't want to play d4 here. I was like, d4 just looks ridiculous to me because at some point he's going to play f4, and I have like 2 or 3 moves to get my knight back. I also have a couple of moves to get my king to safety, and there is no way I'm going to deal with it. And also, since I've not played c5, he can always play bishop here at some point and force me to go to b7. I don't even get to go to c6 when he plays bishop d2. So I was naturally, of course, a little annoyed with queen b2 because I didn't like it. So here comes an interesting point. I really wanted to complicate the position. So what can I do? What can I do to create any sorts of complications? So this is not necessarily finding a good move because it's not necessarily a good move. It's just that I want to know if anyone, I mean, we're just going through the calculation exercise. So let's just do it in that way. What can black play here to complicate the position? Any forcing variation or anything. So that's the understanding behind why I started thinking like this. So let's go. I don't want any simple moves where white is slowly going to gain an upper hand. Let's play something more forcing, creating some kind of imbalance. So Santosh, you're rerouting your knight, and it seems a little slow though, Santosh. I think I can play I think one of the ideas for white might be to take and go rook e1 now, just letting you know. I think e5 looks very, very weak. Actually, no, if I take and go there, you'll play knight c6. Maybe I'll have to play bishop d2 first, then take and go rook e1. That's one of the possibilities. Havish wants to take on e4. Aradhya wants to take on e4. By the way, let me just point out the idea of pawn takes e4. If pawn takes e4, pawn takes e4, knight c4, isn't black completely fine? Then don't you play bishop on a6 or bishop on e6 and probably bishop. Yeah, you can play bishop e6 too. Actually, the knight on c4 is guarding e5 and I cannot take it much. So William, d4, we talked about it, right? I really didn't want to play d4. It's a possible move, but I didn't want to. So what's stopping then? Looks like d4 should be the first move you should calculate, right? It seems completely fine if d4, knight c4. Thank you, Ryo. It's giving me the tactical options quickly, right? D takes e4, obviously white has knight takes e5 check. And then I take back, yeah? So I started calculating this actually a little bit. So d takes e4, knight takes e5. I didn't want to stop calculating. I go king g8. And now white can play either knight takes e4 or pawn takes e4. Yeah, so I guess d takes e4 back to take the pawn back. And I was wondering, is there anything I can do to win that pawn back? You know, we have a typical knight on e5 situation and the pawn on e4 behind under attack. So I didn't want to just give up hope there and simply say I lost a pawn. Does anyone see any idea for black to regain the pawn? Any forcing sequence or any forcing interesting variation there? Okay, Evan wants to speak. Go on, Evan.
Like one back upon here.
Not so. Basically, the variation I'm looking at is I play d takes e4, white plays knight takes e5 check, black plays king g8. Now white plays d takes e4 back. So now white's up a pawn. Can you win the pawn back somehow?
I think I could play knight takes e4.
Very interesting. Knight takes e4. White plays knight takes e4.
Oh, never mind.
Well, actually, you might be onto something.
Oh,
Daniel.
Queen d5.
Correct. Yeah, I think Andy, Sir Wagner, they're all typing in chat. Correct. So knight takes e4, queen d5. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this caught my eye, and I started calculating. So I play d takes e4. I know white has to play knight takes e5 because if d takes e4, knight c4, black is fine. My knight is back in place. I'm defending e5. So knight takes e5. I go king g8, right? So knight d3 and it is bad. Ryo, do you want to speak? Do you want to tell me? Let's unmute. Go on.
No, it's bad because like pawn takes e4, knight takes e5, king g8, pawn takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, queen d5, knight f6 check, pawn takes f6, and now he has knight d3.
Knight f6 check. So basically very interesting. So you spotted a move like knight f6 check, ruining my kingside pawn structure, and knight d3, right? Yeah. So very good. This is exactly what I was calculating. But guess what? I agree that my pawn structure is super bad, but it feels like your pieces are a little awkward. So for example, after knight d3, what if I play king f7?
h7?
f7.
F7. No.
I have to defend f6, so king f7.
Knight f4 or something.
So knight f4, let's say I play queen e5. Havish is saying h6 pawn hangs there, so which is also possible. There's also bishop takes h6, or there's also knight f4. Knight f4 is more solid. Bishop h6 picks up the pawn, right? So let's see. So thanks, Roy. We're going to go further into this calculation. And thanks, Evan. So Havish, do you want to talk about taking on h6 and discuss that? We'll have you guys on mute. Sorry. All right. Go on, Havish.
Yeah, so basically, knight into e5 check, king g8, then what's the move again?
Well, that's okay. I'll start over again. So d takes e4, knight e5 check, king g8.
Then d into e4.
D takes
then,
e4.
Knight takes e4, knight takes e4, queen d5, knight f6, g into f6, knight d3, king f7, bishop into f6.
Bishop takes h6. Now, I was considering white can play. I mean, I didn't stop calculating here because I have some moves like rook g8 or bishop h6. So what if I play rook g8?
I think
there's one good move for white, I think.
No.
Well, f3 looks too dangerous. I'm going to play also bishop takes h3, remember?
Yeah, that's it.
So Andy is suggesting in chat that white can play knight to f4. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Knight to f4 is probably a good move because you're hitting the queen, you're defending g2, you're defending h3, right? But guess what? I didn't want to still end here, guys. Do you think black can find any interesting move there? I'm pushing your calculation here a little bit. I know it's a lot, but guess what? Once you play pawn takes e4, everything becomes forced. You lose a pawn, right? There's no going back anymore. So that's the reason I'm really pushing your calculation, because you have to make your decision right now. Andy, excellent. I want to hear what move you're talking about. Can you speak?
Andy? Well, I thought after knight f4, rook g2, knight g2, bishop h3, and rook g8, and then...
Excellent. This is what excited me too, right? Again, I'm going to bring all of you up to speed one more time. I'm still not making the move, so hang in there with me, because this is the most critical point of the game, and I'm just going to spend the most time here, right? So pawn takes e4, knight takes e5 check, king g8, white plays pawn takes e4. Now we play knight takes e4, queen to d5, Knight f6 check, pawn takes f6, knight to d3, king f7. After bishop h6, rook g8. After knight f4, rook takes g2, sacrificing a rook. After knight takes g2, bishop takes h3. Now I'm threatening mate, and I'm threatening rook to g8. So if the knight moves somewhere, I simply play rook g8 check and rook g2 check, and I'm winning. There is a possibility to play some moves like pawn to f3 or something. Even then, there is bishop g2 followed by rook check, and looks like black has a very interesting attack there, right? It does not look easy at all for white, because at best, black might at least win the bishop on h6, and I will be having a huge attack for the exchange, right? So this looked very promising to me, right? But I have to tell you again, there is a very, very dangerous problem in what we just did, right? So I'll tell you what happened after this. So I kind of saw this and I got excited and I said, okay, this looks really, really nice. And then I started calculating what Ryo was suggesting is that what if they don't take bishop takes h6? Ryo, knight g4. Knight g4, I simply play bishop takes g4, I think, yeah. Or the knight f4 variation is what I was talking about. I mean, bishop takes g4, h takes g4, Ryo, that does not look that obvious to me to say it's over. Because I still play some king g7 or something, and I know my king side is weak, but you're still not ready. Particularly your queen is so bad. I feel, and my queen is on d5, my rook is on e8. I feel like I have a very reasonable chance. I mean, it's still probably better for white, no questions about it. But I was just simply thinking that I have a decent chance because white's pieces are really misplaced, right? But okay, so I went back to knight f4 variation and I saw, okay, instead of bishop h6, maybe white will play knight f4 and I'll play queen e5. And then I spent a little bit of time there, right? By now, I noticed I've spent already 25 minutes at least, 25 minutes in the clock. And I'm not 100% sure on what's going on. And I'm finding it very interesting at least, right? Because other variations like d4 or queen c7, I just didn't like it. I felt like white is slowly going to roll over me with f4. So the next question I suddenly asked is, why do I assume that he has to play pawn takes e4? So after pawn takes e4, knight e5 check king g8, I suddenly noticed that white can also play knight takes e4. What about knight takes e4, guys? What do you think about that? So d takes e4, knight e5 check, king g8. Now white plays knight takes e4. Black has to play knight takes e4 and d takes e4. Now can we find any interesting move for black? I'm still down a pawn. Queen e7, very nice. But what I was thinking is, at some point, queen e7, white can play bishop f4. If you play queen f6, white can play pawn f4. Right? Queen e7 runs into bishop f4. Queen f6 maybe pawn to f4. And I started thinking that, if bishop f4 and bishop g3, then I think I have zero compensation. I felt like once white goes bishop f4, eventually put the bishop on g3, knight on e5 cannot even be kicked. So it should be zero compensation, white's winning. But I was excited about the idea where white plays f4, because now I knew that e4 pawn would be weak. If somehow I can attack the e4 pawn, I'm going to win it, because white has committed f4. But the problem is my queen on f6 was really not in the right place. I play queen f6, he plays f4. Right? So then I came to another interesting conclusion. So I was also considering queen to h4. But I rejected queen to h4 because of rook e1. Because now e4 is well protected. And again, I'm not really threatening the knight, right? So then I thought of a very interesting combination. I said, why not start with queen e7 and attack the knight? Now, if he plays f4, now I have some interesting options to go bishop a6 and queen c5. And then the queen can just jump in if the rook is on e1 or something like that. And if he plays bishop f4, I actually can play queen h4 after that. So I play queen e7 first. If you play bishop f4, then I play queen h4, doing a skewer and winning the pawn back. So by now, guys, I spent about 40 minutes in this position. So 20 minutes in the king f7 position for playing d5. And in this position, I spent 40 minutes. So my opponent, of course, is happily walking around. Unique is like, and probably wondering what on earth is my opponent thinking. So I kind of got to a point saying, listen, I cannot keep on calculating anymore. I have to make a move, yeah? So I played d takes c4. So I said, let's see what happens. It's at least nevertheless looks interesting. Why not, yeah? Can anyone tell me what I did wrong? Let's see if anyone can already spot it before I make the moves. I showed a lot of variations. Can you spot any serious errors? Actually, I'm going to give this as a chance because I'll tell you what happened, right? When I played d takes c4, I was thinking to myself, if my opponent is going to spend about 10-15 minutes, then I know I've done a decent move. If he's going to respond in like 2-3 minutes, I know I've messed up, right? Because if he's solving something in 2-3 minutes and he doesn't find the position to be interesting, that means I missed something, right? So when I played this, that was my kind of reassuring thing to say, okay, you know what, let's see how much time he spends. So he played like the first move quickly, but then he eventually, I would say, solved it in about 2.5 minutes. So it was a little embarrassing. So the whole game is quite embarrassing. That's okay. But the funny thing is the minute he made his move and I realized I got this feedback that I probably missed something, I was easily able to spot what I missed. I was able to look at the variation and see, okay, oh my God, this is terrible. I'm just losing. But I needed somehow that feedback. Until I didn't find out that I was losing, I didn't find the sequence. So now I'm telling you that information. So white is simply winning here. Black has zero compensation. Whatever variation we talked about is just totally useless. But I want to see if you can react properly. Let's do 5 minutes. If Nishri can find it in 2.5 minutes, I think you guys can find it in 5 minutes, right? Let's start timer for 5 minutes. Remember this, take your time, give me one shot. Give me one shot. I'm actually even going to flip the board if you guys want to. Should I flip the board? How many of you think I should flip the board? Okay, I'm getting a bunch of yes, so I'm going to flip the board. Do it. Oh, I wish it's saying keep it as it is. Unfortunately, it's too late. I got a bunch of yes. Okay, let's see if you can make the best decision to get to a winning position. Now you also have more information because you know what black is trying to do. Type in some variations if you have some ideas. I'll tell you if you're going in the right direction. I can guide you a little bit. Looks like Andy has solved it. So Aradhya, we talked about that variation too, but I don't think that's, I mean, I still think black has, I mean, white's better, but black has some play in that variation too. But the kind of move I want you to find is clear refutation, that's it. White is just winning. Of course he did, Andy. He found it and he played it. Okay, so you guys can start giving me some variations. I would like to see something from everyone. I've actually not heard some of you give me a move in a while. Give me some moves and variations. Come on. No passive participation, active participation. Okay, I see. Well, Santosh, we didn't play Queen E7 in that position. We played Knight takes E4 in that position. So, Evan, I don't know what font that is. I have no idea what you're what you've typed. Okay, so I have no idea what the move is though. Oh, you gave the move after that. Okay, makes sense. In which position are you talking about? Oh, you want to play Knight takes E4 in this position? Troy, that's an interesting variation. I'm trying to see if that actually works. No, the problem is I play Queen takes E4, Troy. Yeah, and then your knight on G6 is under attack. So Evan, Knight E4 right now doesn't seem to help as much. Come on, let's go. Who can give me other moves and variations? Let's go. I haven't heard. Let's see. So Wagner, I haven't heard a move. Give me something. Aryan. Merrick, I heard like one move. You gave me one move long ago. I'm sure you can give me more moves. Angela's still thinking. I like it. So, Daniel, I think you're kind of close, but the way you played it, you actually lose a piece. That's you got an interesting idea, but I think your execution went. Yep, correct. Yep, that makes more sense. Yeah, very good. You have it. All right. I think the time is up. So let's take a look at what happened. I'm going to flip the board to show the game. Knight e5 and d4. Actually, not d4. Knight e5 check he played. I played king g8. And he took the pawn quite fast. Yeah, so this is where I thought actually. So the 2.5 minute decision was this one. Because I felt knight e4, d4 are both equally interesting. And pawn takes, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, queen d5. The minute I knew that he made a quick decision, I knew what the correct move was, yeah? Rook e1. So the idea is after rook takes e5, that is bishop takes h6. What I hadn't seen is that the queen is actually pinning the rook to a checkmate. So obviously I cannot take the bishop, I know that, because the knight is going to f6, but I was counting on attacking the knight. But I just cannot take the knight. So a simple problem, yeah. So even here, there is some interesting part. The point is, he really is going to continue to target my rook and the pin, because otherwise bishop f5 and rook e8, I can still be okay. But it turns out that he just relentlessly attacks the rook. So bishop f5, rook d1. I move, then he plays f4. So basically, there's nothing I can do. And if I play queen b5, he simply goes queen c3. And same problem. He's threatening f4. So he's not moving the bishop out of h6. And I just don't have much. I just simply cannot survive here. There was some rook e8, rook e7. I think this is the last straw. I was calculating probably rook e8. I don't know, maybe f4. No, f4 I can play rook e7, I think. Maybe there's now queen g3 is lost, yeah. Because I get to play, so if I play rook e7, rook d8 check, or knight d6 or something. There are lots of moves here. I guess I don't want to waste our time in this. It's basically just lost for black. So I think the lesson I learned from this game, which I kind of tried to implement midway through the tournament, and it worked very well the next 3 games. Actually, I did this mistake in this game. I did similar mistake in the next game, which I was kind of winning, and or better at least. And then I messed up and lost because, again, I was calculating in one position for 30 to 35 minutes. So if any of you have this mentality to calculate long variations, just remember that, look at how ridiculous this looks like, because this variation is how many moves long, and why was I even thinking about this? This is the variation we were talking about, and I was thinking rook g8 here, right? So at the end of the game, it felt like I was calculating in a different planet and my opponent was calculating in a different planet, because any of the moves that were relevant in the game, I was not looking at them. The moves that I was calculating, the moves that were interesting to me, the moves that I was trying to solve were all kind of irrelevant in the position. So it was only adding to the frustration, because after a couple of moves, my opponent plays something new, and I just don't have the energy to sit down again for another 30 minutes to solve the problems, right? So here, actually, I did look for candidate moves. It's not like I didn't look for candidate moves, but I kind of made an assumption that white is going to give up the knight without anything in return. I didn't really think to see that can white just like win the game here, right? So why not just calculate at all? I didn't understand what the question is, Havish. What exactly do you mean? You don't want to calculate any moves? You cannot play all these moves by intuition, yeah? This is a 4-6 sequence. If I'm going to play d takes e4 here, I'm losing a pawn. I have to calculate. There's no other way around it. But the thing is, it's also interesting because at the end of the game, Nizhnik made a small comment. He said, knight takes e4 will never work. It looked very suspicious, right? And that kind of made me feel like, that's probably one of the important things to be done. And I should have probably been more sharp at understanding that this is a ridiculous looking tactic. With my pieces are also not developed, somewhere white will find some good move to refute it, right? And that's the kind of intuitive feeling he had. And he probably didn't spend most of the time in any of these variations, and he jumped right into this rook e1 and bishop takes h6, right? So to summarize all the things, basically what I want you to remember this is that when I came back, I was able to kind of regroup a little bit at least, because I was able to look through these decisions and kind of ask why I did them. And since they were very fresh in my head, I was able to recollect the variations that I was actually calculating. And I could clearly tell where I was making bad decisions. I was calculating variations that were not relevant. And that helped me. So after losing a couple of games, I switched into intuitive mode a little bit. I started playing more intuitively. I said, I don't want to solve all problems. I'm going to kind of course correct a little bit, right? So keep this in mind. My advice to all of you is that the one part where no one else can help you is that no one can tell you why you made a mistake, right? And you're all at this point way past the level of saying, I didn't see a move, I blundered, I didn't see a fork or tactic, or I didn't see this move. You have to start digging a little bit more deep to see what the problem is, right? Why did you put yourself in that position in the first place? How could you avoid it in the future games? If you get into time trouble, why are you getting into time trouble? If you play too fast and you're blundering, why did you not understand that it's a critical position? So there are lots of questions you can ask. You have to be self-critical. You have to be very honest to yourself and ask these questions. That will really, really help. If you can dig deep like this, you can solve problems much, much faster. But overall, yeah, it was a very disappointing game for me. I felt that's the reason I sat down to go back and say, I need to think about this, right? I don't mind losing a game, but this was like I said, it's my opponent is playing in a different planet and I'm playing in a different planet and he's just crushing me. Like I have no chance in this game. And that should make you go back and think, yes, RIP. That's what happened. All right. I think that's a good place for us to wrap up. Or if you guys have any questions, I can answer that. Otherwise, you're good. Remember, don't remember the loss. This is only a lesson, right? Lots of good games that I have, just reminding you.